Hi there, and welcome to another Sonic Academy tutorial with me, Phil Johnston, and Chris Agnelli.
Hey.
Or Agnew, is it Agnew or Agnelli?
Agnelli. Thank you.
Agnelli?
I've spent 10 years protecting my secret identity and you've just revealed it to the world.
Okay, well, Chris is with us today, and he's going to be taking us through the remix of John O'Callaghan, Big Sky. And he's got his Logic project up, and we're going to be going into the details and having a look at how it was all put together. Why don't you start off by giving us a bit of background on how the remix came about?
We were kind of prolific in early 2000s. We had a track called Holding On to Nothing, which featured Audrey Gallagher, and Audrey sang on John's track. And I think John had heard this track and was a huge fan of it. And we met John probably about 2004, 2005 as a young kid. And he and a group of friends were quite prolific on Matt Hardwick's.
It's crazy to think that's nearly 10 years ago.
Yeah, it is frightening. It's 10 years ago. It seems like yesterday. So they were quite prolific on Matt Hardwick's forums, and we got chatting to them and posting. They were sending us tracks. A guy called Aled Man and Dewey from Wales. And the first time I met him was at a festival which is still going called Wakestock. And John was backstage and we started chatting. Long story short, he'd released a few tracks that we were hammering, we were really playing and supporting him big time, and we got him onto our DJ agency at the time, Fresh DJ Management, and he had written this track with an Audrey sang on it, and it was very much around the time we were listening to Gabriel Dresden. He was coming up to my gaff, and we were trying to do stuff in the studio for a potential album I was looking at doing. And the original, if we flick here, the original, which you probably may not be too familiar with, is very deep and very slow and chuggy,
Yeah.
So
a lot more laid back, and
yeah, so we'll flick onto the.
is it slower as well?
I presume it is, yeah. Of course, we did ours at 140. So that's the track I got sent through, and immediately thought, the vocal is great. It was very much in the vein of Holding On to Nothing, and we'd been kind of influenced at the time. The original was sort of influenced through Gabriel Dresden. A couple of tracks. That's a similar sort of vibe.
Yeah, it's quite sort of smooth bass lines, and
myself and Robbie had been playing that sort of sound out and been quite successful with it. So John called up and said, "Look, do you fancy doing a remix?" I said, "Yeah, what's the brief?" And it was, do your 140 trance, your worst. Basically, his brief to me was Holding On to Nothing. We want, that's such a big influence on me. Can you, do something like that? So
do you want to play through this and just sort of give us an idea of maybe around the break and a bit of the vocal and sort of, then we'll go into maybe the more details.
So as you can see, we have 55 tracks here now. 20 of those from 35 down to 55 are kind of effects, sweeps and drops and other such things. Everything in red is drums. Everything in brown is bass and pads. Pink is sort of plucks and stabs. And then my favourite thing is these sort of DM. I'm a massive Depeche Mode fan, and I kind of got close to doing something Depeche Mode-esque on this track. So the start of the track, arrangement wise,
do you want to give a quick playthrough of the track just so we can hear what we're...
Okay.
Sounded pretty cool. So okay, you're going to take us through then and sort of go into a bit more detail about some of the elements. You want to start off with maybe sort of a drum and solo the drum group,
Yeah, so
or tell us. I mean, there was a bit you were describing there about this DM delay that you were saying that sort of was the.
I think what we'll in this to round this video off, I think we'll talk sort of about the arrangement and my thoughts behind the arrangement. If you listen carefully, there is one verse repeated.
Right. Okay.
So that can always be difficult. You know, you tend to get a second verse which has moves the story of the song on, whereas this was one verse. So
I don't tend to notice things like that. I mean, I sort of I don't necessarily listen to lyrics quite that much. You know,
I couldn't tell you one lyric of one song because I'm always listening to the backing track, but when I'm remixing, I'm obviously listening to this.
I mean, I listen to the vocals, but I'm hearing more the melodies and the sort of
treatment and
rhythmicals,
reverb, yeah,
and stuff like that.
The first thing I think that stuck in my head with the remix was introducing the vocal. I always thought with Holding On To Nothing, we'd introduced the vocal really well and sounded great in the club. There was this tension that built up. Then it dropped, and this almighty vocal came out through the speakers, and it was her voice, her sort of ethereal Irishness. You know, there's an Irishness to the voice. So the first thing it did was we had our standard build up with drums coming in and basses, but you have to try and create a sort of tension on the one note, and I think sort of from here. So we're building, and wanted a clever way to bring it in. And between 69 and 73, we do this track edit thing. So we'll just have a listen to that in solo. And that's
like a BT,
sort of
original stutter edit type stuff.
Yeah, with a bit of, we've got a bit of.
10 years ago, you actually had to do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no plugin.
So you can see there's some things are reversed, or some bits are chopped up, and we've got a low cut going on it, a phaser coming through it, and to me that sets the vocal up.
Yeah, I mean, arrangement wise, I mean, it was one thing that I probably didn't do enough of in tracks, but all your tracks sort of have the thing where it's sort of driving along in the kick, and then instead of sort of just a big sweep up and then crashing into the next bit, you sort of tend to try and bring things right back down. El Nino did the same thing where it's almost down to silence. You're creating that real tension in a club. Silence in a club's a really powerful thing because there's a lot of loud noises.
It all stems from one night in a club that I can distinctly remember, and the track was BBE, 7 Days in 1 Week, and we were in a club in Belfast, probably 1996, probably 95, 96, and it was blaring all night, and BBE came on, and there's a point in that track where there's silence, and it was the most amazing thing.
Like a hair
stand, and you could hear people talking, and everybody stopped and looked, and then there's an almighty orchestra hit, Gin Gin, and it kicks back in. And that moment in a club always stuck with me. And it's back to that, having everything rattling along and slamming it down to nothing.
It's that dynamics thing we were talking about in the mastering tutorial as well, is, the drama is created from highs and lows. And, if you just have your track completely mastered and it's just on one level from start to finish, there's you can't have any of that drama. Even if you have the best riff in the world, if there's no modulation in your arrangement in terms of levels and sort of emotion and sort of dips and troughs, then you're not getting
absolutely. And the same in films, there are big noisy sequences that are battles and stuff, and then there's the tender moments that are quiet, and it's the same as music. It's just peaks and troughs and ups and downs, and that's what you have to tease out of your tracks. And I don't like things. That's probably why I was never really into techno and stuff, because it was, to me, it kind of lacked those dramatic moments,
it doesn't have the same sort of, well, I mean, I'm sure people would argue it doesn't have the same emotional.
No, it's more groove and more sort of, it's a different, techno stuff does a different thing. Trance is very much about emotion and about beauty and melody and stuff, and that's why I could relate to it. So the other thing I did, the other big setup is your first verse and into your chorus, and it's the first chorus, and this is the hook of the song, and that I spent a lot of time at, and we'll dig further into that once we get into looking at the pads here and the pluck and what other instrumentation.
Do you want to just play through that transition from the is
so
that the first verse to the
first verse,
the chorus?
chorus? Yes. So let me just see if we got
Maybe something soloed, yeah.
So we got. So that
was there any? I mean, I always find in choruses, maybe again, it's probably a bad habit. Is I always feel that I want to, for the first chorus, I want to break down into the first chorus as a breakdown to have it more sort of epic. But obviously you're there, you're sort of just.
Well, I've done quite the opposite. First chorus is all instrumentation and lift, and my second chorus is my breakdown. So you'll hear we repeat here the second verse and then into the second chorus. So I had to really, this chorus was going back and forth with John O'Callaghan quite a bit to really nail that impact. And I remember he listened to a sort of rough demo and went, "You've nailed the chorus. That's it. The chorus is nailed." And there's nothing too dramatic going on. There's probably this little sound in the background. That filter opens up. A bit of a pad that there's nothing but just sort of weird.
Yeah, and they're all sidechained, and well, we'll go into more detail once we sort of cover the arrangement. And then so you're dropping down. Then the next section is another verse or the same verse again.
Same verse again.
Is that driving or is that drop down?
No, that we have after the chorus we have this kind of sort of again that sort of cut up shutdown, and I introduced this sound, this DM delay, which is kind of me randomly playing notes, but it just sits in the background. So we have a small sort of break, the vocal fades out.
Yeah, that vocal really helps sort of bring you.
And one thing I'm kind of famous for, which John was very adamant I had in, was this tape delay feedback. And the magic number in this tape delay is 54% feedback, and it starts feeding back in itself and starts distorting.
Yeah.
And you get this really nice, so if we listen. Again, this appeared in Holding On To Nothing. And you hear it starting to feed back on itself. And it's just and then shut off. So you get that change, so it's, and I've spent a lot of time, you can see here, these automation things, there's a lot of just sitting listening and tweaking the automation.
And did you all do your, I know you had the Mackie control surface, did you do automation using it, or was it all just sort of drawn it in?
No, it's all drawn it in. I got the Mackie control surface. I've never been in love with it. I've used it because I've had to, and I've spent quite a bit of money on it, but I don't think it improved my mix and anything. I still to this day miss
a proper big desk. Yeah,
proper big desk. So we're into repeat chorus, and I think strangely it's kind of it's similar to the first. It's nothing too different. So the next thing we do is the chorus 2 is now the breakdown, and it's same as chorus 1. All the pads and all are there, but we just take out all the drums and we introduce this break sub. So you have just that big growl. I always loved that noise. It was in Amanda Ghost track or something, I think it was, and it's just that's from a Korg Legacy Cell. And the other thing to note is most of the instrumentation are Logic's own. There's
ES2 and
EX24s.
So by this time you'd got rid of all your JP and your Nord and the amazing Waldorf.
Yeah, all my synths that I loved, and I sold it.
So I went through a similar transition where I'd you know, went all digital and tried to do everything in the box, and I did it probably a year or so before you, and at that stage it didn't work because my computer wasn't, you know, you could maybe run one synth and with the power core and the virus, it just didn't really tie in. And I think by the time you did it,
It worked.
you had a Mac Pro and, you know, you had all that
Yeah.
stuff, and it sort of seemed to work for you.
Yeah, and I think the other big thing that when I did it, Logic 7 at the time had started coming with
All the stuff
all the
included.
synths. So I mean, straight out of the box, you had your synths, your bass synth, you had, you know, even distortion and stuff, and that created my sound for a couple of years because it was.
And do you miss hardware synths at all?
I actually don't, and I don't. I love I love the soft synths. I don't. You know, when people talk to me about, oh, have you got this soft synth and this soft synth? You know, I don't. I'm not mad into having the latest and
You
greatest.
need something with a decent super saw and your
Yeah, that's
golden.
it. I always found Logic's plugins did me, and I could always work them and get something out of them. So I never looked elsewhere. Whereas I think if you have Ableton or Cubase, you needed to buy extra stuff, and that's
Yeah,
fine.
Cubase was a nightmare back in the day because it didn't come with anything at all.
So yeah, we have our breakdown here, and I'll play it quickly through. You know, it's standard. We start delaying vocals out, and we start, you know, opening pads up and stuff. You know, it's a very standard fare. We'll go through it in more detail. These sort of these sort of noises, I love that.
Mm.
You know, it's kind of random.
Quite epic. It sort of reminds me
yeah.
of Blade Runner or something like
yeah,
that.
but I mean, again, that's just an AS2 with probably with the distortion on it turned up. Yeah, distortion up. Nothing too mad. And then we have again the snare roll. That goes back to BT days, you know, where it's filter opening up and a phaser on it, just to give it a bit of movement, give it something else. Pads opening up, plucks opening up, delays feeding back, and then all this sort of effects.
Doesn't sound like there's the same sort of level of side chaining and stuff you would have get nowadays, you know.
No, I suppose, you know, I'm not anti sidechain, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I find it can hurt my ears and stuff. I like things to feel a bit more natural. I'm not huge over compressor. I don't slam compressors and really turn things up. I like tracks to.
And you were always
breathe.
quite light in the bass. You're always sort of.
I'm terrified of bass. I remember probably in the early days I did a couple of mixes that were so bassy it was just a mess, and ever since then I've been very frightened of bass. And
it's easy if you're a DJ to turn the bass up a wee bit.
Yeah,
It's
but
a lot harder to get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it always made my mixes sound a bit light, you know, and never. Loads of my mixes have never really been truly happy with, you know, and I think I still to this day still work on. I think I can get detail in mixes. I think I can get nice separation, but just that overall sweetness, I lack
the warmth a wee bit.
So I think, Phil, you know, we've had a quick look at the arrangement. I think in the next video we'll look at start stripping back the drums and going through the key elements in the drums.
Cool.